The Galactic Council meeting chamber buzzed with excitement as Admiral Korthax of the Zalarian Empire stood before the assembled representatives of 17 alien civilizations. His four arms gestured dramatically as he presented his plan to finally contain human threat. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Korthax announced, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "For too long, humanity has resisted our peaceful integration efforts. Their primitive weapons and barbaric military traditions have made them difficult to control. But I have discovered the perfect solution." The holographic display behind him showed Earth, surrounded by a massive fleet of alien warships. The image zoomed in to show human cities, military bases, and weapon storage facilities marked with glowing red indicators. "We will simply remove their weapons," Korthax declared. "Every gun, every missile, every tank and fighter jet. Our superior technology allows us to teleport these crude instruments of war directly into our disposal units. Without weapons, humans will have no choice but to accept our rule peacefully." Ambassador Thylex from the Andromedan Collective raised a tentacle. "Admiral, have you studied human history? They seem remarkably adaptable when it comes to conflict." Korthax dismissed the concern with a wave of his upper arms. "What can they possibly do without their precious weapons? Fight us with their bare hands." The chamber filled with the alien equivalent of laughter. The vote was unanimous. Operation Peaceful Disarmament would begin immediately. 3 days later, the skies above Earth shimmered with the arrival of thousands of alien vessels. The disarmament beams activated simultaneously, creating a planet-wide energy field that identified and teleported every human weapon into space. In seconds, billions of firearms, missiles, tanks, jets, and even kitchen knives vanished from Earth. General Sarah Chun stood in what remained of the Pentagon's Strategic Command Center, watching the feeds from around the world. Every weapon, down to the last pocket knife, had disappeared. Her aide, Lieutenant Rodriguez, looked pale. "General, what do we do? We have nothing left to fight with." Chin's expression remained calm, almost amused. "Lieutenant, do you know what makes humans different from every other species these aliens have conquered?" "No, ma'am. We've been killing each other efficiently for thousands of years before we invented guns. Give me a connection to every military commander worldwide. It's time to remind these aliens why humans are the apex predators of Earth." Within hours, something strange began happening across the planet. Military bases that should have been in panic were instead buzzing with activity. Soldiers weren't fleeing or surrendering. They were training. In China, thousands of soldiers practiced with wooden staffs and improvised spears. In Japan, ancient dojos that had been tourist attractions suddenly became military training centers, teaching soldiers the way of the samurai. British forces raided museums for medieval weapons and armor. American special forces sharpened everything they could find into weapons. But the real surprise came from the civilian population. Instead of panicking, humans everywhere began crafting weapons from anything available. Car parts became clubs. Glass bottles became cutting implements. Chemistry teachers started mixing interesting compounds. Engineers began building trebuchets and catapults in parking lots. Admiral Korthax monitored the situation from his command ship, growing increasingly puzzled. Why aren't they surrendering? They have no weapons. His intelligence officer, Vex, nervously reported, "Sir, they appear to be making new ones. Primitive ones, but in enormous quantities. Also, sir, there's something else. The humans seem excited. On Earth, the transformation was remarkable. MMA fighters became military instructors. Historical reenactors found themselves leading tactical units. Parkour enthusiasts taught soldiers how to navigate urban environments without equipment. Rock climbers showed troops how to scale buildings with bare hands. The first alien ground forces landed in New York, confident in their energy shields and advanced armor. They expected to find cowering, weaponless humans begging for mercy. Instead, they found an army of humans armed with baseball bats wrapped in barbed wire, Molotov cocktails made from vodka bottles, and improvised crossbows built from car parts. The alien shields, designed to stop energy weapons and bullets, did nothing against a sledgehammer swung by a construction worker who had been waiting his whole life for a chance like this. The battle was swift and shocking. The aliens, trained to fight at comfortable distances with high-tech weapons, were completely unprepared for humans who charged into close combat with improvised weapons and terrifying enthusiasm. The human forces moved like water, using buildings and terrain to their advantage, turning the urban landscape into a nightmare maze of ambushes and traps. As news of the New York victory spread, similar scenes played out worldwide. Humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. And they were doing it with sticks, stones, and an unsettling amount of creativity. Admiral Korthax watched the tactical feeds in horror. This is impossible. They're using primitive weapons. How are they defeating our forces? Vex pulled up historical data on his screen. Sir, I've been researching human history. It appears they've been perfecting the art of killing for approximately 300,000 years. They only invented firearms 700 years ago. We may have made a tactical error. The real shock came when the aliens realized that humans weren't just defending. They were learning, adapting, and improving their tactics with each encounter. Every alien weapon captured was immediately reverse-engineered. Every weakness discovered was exploited, and the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Worse still, the disarmament field had an unexpected side effect. It had created a planet-wide shared experience that united humanity like never before. Old enemies put aside their differences to face the common threat. The entire species had become a single, coordinated war machine. As the first day of the invasion ended, Admiral Korthax received reports from across the planet. The casualty ratios were staggering. For every human lost, dozens of alien soldiers had fallen. The advanced alien military, dependent on their technology and long-range combat, was being torn apart by species that had turned violence into an art form over millennia of evolution. Perhaps, Korthax said quietly, his confidence evaporating, we should have left them their guns. At least then, they might have stayed at a comfortable distance. The second week of the invasion brought horrors the Galactic Council had never imagined. Admiral Korthax stood in his command center, watching feed after feed of his forces being systematically destroyed by weaponless humans. His second-in-command, Commander Zelf, approached with another devastating report. Sir, we've lost contact with the ground forces in Moscow. The last transmission mentioned something about underground tunnels filled with humans wielding mining equipment. Korthax's 4 eyes closed in frustration. Mining equipment? Pickaxes, sledgehammers, and industrial drills, sir. The humans apparently spent the last week turning their entire metro system into a death trap. Our soldiers keep disappearing down there. The few who make it out are traumatized. On Earth, the resistance had evolved beyond anyone's imagination. General Chun coordinated with military leaders worldwide from a hidden bunker, but the truth was that humanity no longer needed centralized command. Every human had become a soldier, and they were terrifyingly creative. In Tokyo, office workers had transformed skyscrapers into vertical kill zones. They dropped filing cabinets, office chairs, and computer monitors from heights that turned everyday objects into lethal projectiles. Japanese construction workers had built massive ballistae on rooftops using crane parts and steel cables. The Shimazu Corporation, which had manufactured cars just 2 weeks ago, now mass-produced katanas and throwing stars using assembly line techniques. Old sword-making families who had been keeping traditional techniques alive as cultural heritage suddenly found themselves leading industrial weapon production. In the Amazon, indigenous tribes emerged from the rainforest with blowguns and poison darts, teaching special forces units how to move silently through vegetation. The aliens' thermal sensors and motion trackers meant nothing when faced with hunters who had learned from jaguars and anacondas. But perhaps the most terrifying development came from Australia, where the locals had weaponized their wildlife. Soldiers rode into battle on improvised chariots pulled by angry emus. Specialists captured venomous snakes and spiders, releasing them in alien encampments. One particularly creative unit had trained cassowaries, massive, aggressive birds, to attack anything wearing alien armor. Captain Riley of the Australian Resistance explained their strategy to a group of international observers. Mate, we've been dealing with nature trying to kill us for centuries. These aliens thought they were scary? They've never met a pissed-off kangaroo or a drop bear we've convinced to hate purple armor. the aliens tried to adapt. They reinforced their shields, increased patrols, and brought in heavier armor. Nothing worked. Humans found ways around every countermeasure. When the aliens strengthened their shields against blunt force, humans switched to chemical attacks. When they protected against chemicals, humans used fire. When they became fireproof, humans used ice and freezing compounds. In Russia, the winter itself became a weapon. Humans led alien patrols into blizzards, then ambushed them when their high-tech equipment froze. Babushkas who had survived the Soviet era taught young soldiers how to turn household items into weapons. One elderly woman became legendary for taking down an entire alien squad with nothing but a cast-iron frying pan and decades of built-up rage. The Middle East contributed its own terrifying innovations. Ancient fortresses became death traps filled with improvised explosives made from fertilizer and fuel. Desert nomads on camels outmaneuvered hover tanks in sandstorms, using knowledge passed down for millennia. In America, the situation was equally chaotic. Texas ranchers lassoed alien soldiers and dragged them behind horses. Detroit auto workers built Mad Max-style vehicles with spinning blades and ramming spikes. In Florida, locals had somehow trained alligators to attack on command, leading to what the aliens termed the Jacksonville Incident, an event so traumatic that no alien soldier would speak of it. But the real game-changer came from an unexpected source: children. Across the world, kids who had grown up playing video games instinctively understood tactical concepts that took military officers years to learn. They suggested ambush points, predicted enemy movements, and created communication networks using everything from mirrors to drones. 12-year-old Marcus Thompson from Chicago became famous for designing a trap system using marbles, cooking oil, and fishing line that disabled an entire alien platoon. When asked how he thought of it, he shrugged. Same principle as Home Alone, but with aliens instead of burglars. The aliens' technology, so superior in space, became a liability on Earth. Their hover vehicles were vulnerable to simple pit traps. Their powered armor made them slow in hand-to-hand combat. Their dependence on energy shields left them unprepared for attacks that bypassed technology entirely. Admiral Korthax received hourly updates, each worse than the last. The Siberian offensive had failed when humans unleashed train bears. The African campaign ended when local forces used traditional hunting tactics to isolate and eliminate alien units. The South American push collapsed when humans burned entire sections of rainforest to create impromptu firewalls. "Sir," Vex reported, his voice trembling, "the humans have started something they call Medieval Monday. Every Monday, they only use weapons and tactics from their medieval period. Our psychological warfare division believes they're doing it to mock us." "Mock us?" Korthax's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Yes, sir. Apparently, they find it amusing that technology from 1,000 years ago is defeating our modern forces. There are reports of humans placing bets on which ancient weapon will score the most kills each week. The worst part was the human morale. Instead of being demoralized by the loss of their modern weapons, humans seemed energized. Social media, which somehow still functioned, was full of videos of humans creating new weapons, sharing tactics, and celebrating victories. The hashtag Medieval Monday was trending globally, along with hashtag Alien Olympics, a disturbing competition where humans tried to defeat aliens in increasingly creative ways. Scientists and engineers who had once built rockets now designed perfect trebuchets. Chemists who had worked on pharmaceuticals created new types of poison gas. Doctors who had sworn to do no harm taught anatomy classes focused on alien weak points. The transformation of human society was complete. Every profession had found a way to contribute to the war effort. Chefs created poison meals for captured alien supplies. Artists painted camouflage patterns that confused alien sensors. Musicians used sound frequencies that disrupted alien communications. Even philosophers contributed, writing propaganda that demoralized alien troops by explaining, in detail, humanity's long history of creative violence. As the reports piled up, Admiral Korthax realized a terrifying truth. They hadn't disarmed humanity. They had freed it. By removing modern weapons, they had forced humans to remember what they truly were: the most adaptable, creative, and viciously determined predators in the known galaxy. Commander Zelf, Korthax said quietly, "Begin preparing evacuation protocols." "Sir, we're retreating." "We're not retreating," Korthax corrected, his voice hollow. "We're fleeing. Before the humans figure out how to build spaceships out of wood and spite." The irony wasn't lost on him. The Galactic Council had worried about human guns and missiles. They should have worried about human ingenuity. Because now, an entire planet of very angry, very creative humans have been given the greatest gift possible, a reason to work together and an excuse to use every dirty trick they developed over millions of years of evolution. The second week ended with alien forces in full retreat from major cities. The humans hadn't just adapted to fighting without modern weapons. They had excelled at it, and they were getting better every day. 3 weeks into what the Galactic Council had planned as a simple pacification mission, the alien fleet orbiting Earth found itself under siege. Admiral Korthax stared at his tactical display in disbelief as another transport ship reported an impossible breach. "How?" he demanded, his voice cracking with stress. "How are weaponless humans attacking our ships in orbit?" Intelligence Officer Vex pulled up the footage. The bridge crew watched in horror as humans, wearing improvised spacesuits made from diving equipment and plastic sheeting, floated through space wielding harpoons attached to cables. They had launched themselves from the International Space Station using a massive slingshot constructed from solar panel frames and elastic materials. "They call them Space Vikings, sir," Vex explained weakly. "They board our ships through maintenance hatches and then, well, the crews don't stand a chance in close quarters." The impossible had become routine. Humans had not only defended their planet, but had taken a fight to space using medieval siege tactics adapted for zero gravity. The space station, which should have been helplessly watching the invasion, had become a fortress and launching point for the most audacious raids in galactic history. On Earth, the situation had evolved beyond mere resistance into something the aliens couldn't comprehend. Humans were having fun. The global economy had restructured itself around creative violence. Television networks broadcasted alien hunt competitions. Schools taught applied alien anatomy and creative weapons 101. In Germany, the precision engineering that had once built luxury cars now produced perfect replica medieval weapons at an industrial scale. The Volkswagen factory in Wolfsburg had been converted into the world's largest sword manufacturing facility, producing 10,000 blades daily using robot-assisted forging techniques. The French had turned their wine industry into a chemical weapons program, fermenting new types of alcohol-based explosives. French chefs created poisonous dishes that looked identical to alien food supplies, leading to widespread paranoia among alien troops who no longer trusted any meal. Italy contributed with style. Roman reenactment groups taught formation tactics that hadn't been used for 2,000 years, but proved devastatingly effective against aliens used to range combat. Venetian glassmakers created beautiful but lethal glass weapons that shattered inside targets. The Mafia, given unofficial government sanction, turned out to be exceptionally good at urban guerrilla warfare. But the most unexpected development came from Silicon Valley. Tech workers who had spent years developing apps and social media platforms applied their skills to warfare. They created analog communication networks using mirrors and smoke signals that couldn't be jammed. They designed mechanical computers from gears and springs that calculated artillery trajectories. Most terrifyingly, they gamified the entire war. The Alien Elimination app, which ran on mechanical calculation devices since electronics were too vulnerable to alien interference, tracked kills, suggested tactics, and awarded points for creativity. Leaderboards were posted in every city. The current world champion was a grandmother from Minnesota who had eliminated an entire alien platoon using knitting needles and a thermos of hot coffee. Admiral Korthax watched his empire crumble in real time. The third week had seen the complete collapse of alien control over Earth's surface. Worse, humans had started organizing. The United Earth Resistance Council had formed, combining every nation's military expertise with civilian innovation. General Chun addressed the council from her bunker. Phase 1 was survival. Phase 2 was resistance. We're now entering Phase 3, reverse engineering. Every piece of alien technology we capture, we adapt, not to use as intended, but to turn into something they never expected. The results were immediate and terrifying. Alien hover technology was stripped from downed vehicles and attached to medieval catapults, creating mobile artillery that could appear anywhere. Energy shield generators were reverse engineered not to create new shields, but to overload and explode existing ones. Alien medical technology was studied and used to enhance human physical capabilities. In Brazil, capoeira masters had developed a fighting style specifically designed to combat armored aliens. The fluid, dance-like movements confused alien targeting systems while delivering devastating strikes to weak points. The art spread globally within days, taught through demonstrations and mechanical printing presses. The Russians had perhaps the most disturbing innovation. They had discovered that alien armor conducted cold exceptionally well. Russian forces began using liquid nitrogen, originally for preserving food, as a weapon, freezing aliens solid inside their own protective suits. The Siberian Statue Garden, a field of frozen alien soldiers, became a monument to human ingenuity. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Space Vikings had evolved their tactics. They now used debris from destroyed satellites as ammunition for improvised railguns. The International Space Station had grown into a ramshackle fortress bristling with harpoon launchers, spring-loaded catapults, and boarding tubes. Astronauts who had trained for peaceful scientific missions found themselves leading boarding parties against warships. Commander Yuki Tanaka, formerly a mild-mannered biologist, had become the most feared human in space. Her crew of international astronauts and cosmonauts had captured 17 alien vessels using nothing but improvised weapons and zero-gravity martial arts. Her catchphrase, broadcast on all frequencies before each attack, had become legendary. In space, no one can hear you scream, but they can see you lose. The psychological warfare was perhaps the most effective weapon. Humans broadcasted their victories on every frequency, accompanied by what they called pump-up music, aggressive human compositions that seemed to physically pain alien auditory organs. They painted their faces with war paint, decorated their improvised armor with alien skulls, and gave themselves titles like Destroyer of Worlds and the Harvester. One particularly effective psychological operation involved a Scottish regiment that went into battle wearing traditional kilts, playing bagpipes, and wielding claymores. The combination of the incomprehensible music, the baffling choice to wear skirts in combat, and the savage efficiency of their attacks broke several alien units before combat even began. The aliens tried to negotiate. Ambassador Thylex, who had originally warned about human adaptability, was sent to establish communications. The meeting was held in the ruins of the United Nations building, now decorated with trophies from defeated alien units. Surely, Thylex began nervously, his tentacles twitching. We can reach a peaceful resolution. We will return your weapons and leave your system forever. The human negotiator, a former kindergarten teacher named Mrs. Patterson, who had become famous for taking down an alien commander with a yardstick, smiled sweetly. Oh, honey, why would we want our guns back? We're having much more fun this way. Fun? Thylex's translation device struggled with the concept. You find this enjoyable? Dear, we've been preparing for an alien invasion since we invented science fiction. Do you know how disappointed we were when you showed up with your fancy shields that stop bullets? But then you gave us the gift of taking away our guns, and we got to find out what we're really capable of. We should be thanking you. The negotiations failed when Mrs. Patterson offered to teach the aliens how to knit, since they'd need a hobby once humans finished conquering their empire. The implied threat that humans were no longer content with just defending Earth sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. As the third week ended, Admiral Korthax faced a terrible reality. Not only had the invasion failed, but humans were preparing to take the fight beyond Earth. They had captured enough ships, learned enough about galactic technology, and, most terrifyingly, they had united as a species. Sir, Vex reported, we're detecting massive construction efforts across Earth. They appear to be building siege weapons. Planet-scale siege weapons. That's impossible. You can't siege a planet with catapults. Sir, they're not ordinary catapults. They're using our own gravity manipulation technology combined with medieval principles. Theoretical calculations suggest they could launch projectiles into orbit at significant fractions of light speed. Korthax slumped in his command chair. They had tried to disarm humanity and instead had armed them with something far more dangerous than guns: purpose, unity, and the creative freedom to explore just how terrifying they could be. Send a message to the Galactic Council, he ordered. Tell them we've made a terrible mistake. We didn't disarm humans. We evolved them. The fourth week marked the beginning of what historians would later call the Great Reversal. Admiral Korthax stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council, his once proud bearing replaced by visible exhaustion. The assembled representatives of 17 civilizations watched in stunned silence as he delivered his report. Esteemed colleagues, he began, his voice hollow, I stand before you to report not just the failure of Operation Peaceful Disarmament, but a catastrophe beyond our worst projections. The humans are no longer defending. They are advancing. The holographic display showed Earth, but it was barely recognizable. Massive structures have been built across every continent. Combinations of alien technology and human medieval engineering that defied all logic. Trebuchets the size of skyscrapers. Ballistas powered by antimatter catapults that could launch payloads into deep space. They call it the Yetis Maximus Project, Korthax continued, wincing at the name. Giant siege weapons designed to launch not just projectiles, but invasion forces. They're planning to attack us. With catapults. Interstellar catapults. The Council erupted in disbelief. The pre-march of the Zenthran hegemony stood, his crystalline form vibrating with indignation. This is absurd. You cannot wage interstellar war with medieval weapons. Tell that to the humans, Korthax replied, bringing up tactical footage. The Council watched as a massive space catapult, built in Earth's orbit from salvaged alien ships and held together with what appeared to be duct tape and determination, launched a capsule at tremendous speed. They've been launching probe attacks for days. Small teams using our own FTL drives combined with their siege weapons to appear in our home systems. On Earth, the transformation was complete. Humanity had evolved from desperate defenders to eager conquerors in just 4 weeks. The entire planet had become a military-industrial complex devoted to creative violence. Children played with toy catapults. Teenagers competed in alien dummy launching competitions. Adults attended evening classes on advanced siege warfare in zero gravity. General Chun met with the United Earth War Council in what had once been the Large Hadron Collider, now converted into humanity's primary weapons research facility. Scientists who had once searched for the secrets of the universe now applied that knowledge to launching humans across the galaxy. Project Trojan Horse is ready, reported Dr. Heinrich Muller, formerly a particle physicist, now Earth's chief siege engineer. We've reverse-engineered their FTL technology and combined it with our orbital trebuchets. We can launch boarding parties directly into their home systems. What about Project Angry Birds? Chen asked. Ahead of schedule, Dr. Muller smiled. The Bioweapons Division has successfully trained various Earth animals to operate in zero gravity. The test runs with weaponized honeybees were exceptionally effective. Across Earth, similar projects reach completion. The Australians have perfected their drop-bear-drop pods, capsules full of genetically enhanced koalas trained to attack anything purple. The Japanese had created origami fighters, ships that could fold space-time using principles derived from paper folding. The Americans had built the Freedom Flinger, a moon-based catapult that could launch entire battalions anywhere in the solar system. But perhaps the most terrifying development was the Babushka Brigade, Russian grandmothers who had volunteered to be launched directly at alien command ships armed with nothing but rolling pins and centuries of accumulated disapproval. Test runs suggested that alien morale couldn't withstand their withering glares and disappointed Tutang. In space, the captured alien fleet had been retrofitted with human improvements. Shields designed to stop energy weapons now had medieval castle battlements welded on top. Sleek alien fighters have been modified with ramming spikes and boarding harpoons. The flagship, renamed Bodie McBoatface II, bristled with improvised weapons that violated several laws of physics and all principles of aesthetic design. The first major human offensive began at dawn on a Tuesday. Across Earth, the siege weapons fired simultaneously. Thousands of capsules, ships, and improvised projectiles launched into space, their occupants singing human war songs that caused physical pain to alien auditory systems. The coordination was perfect, timed using mechanical clocks immune to alien interference. Admiral Corthax watched helplessly as human forces appeared throughout Council space. The attacks were impossible to predict or counter. Human forces would appear, cause havoc using increasingly creative methods, and vanish before organized resistance could form. They left behind graffiti, usually variations of "humans were here" and "should have left us our guns." The siege of Zelaria Prime exemplified human tactics. Instead of a traditional invasion, humans launched millions of tennis balls at the planet. Each ball had been carefully calculated to burn up in the atmosphere, creating a planet-wide thunderstorm of flaming projectiles. No real damage was done, but the psychological effect of a week-long rain of flaming sports equipment broke the planetary government's will to resist. The Battle of Andromeda Station was even more surreal. Human forces, dressed as medieval knights but equipped with magnetized boots and zero-gravity training, stormed the galaxy's most advanced military installation using ladders. Actual wooden ladders. The station's AI defense systems, programmed to counter every conceivable form of attack, had no protocols for enemies climbing walls in space. On the crystalline world of Zenthrin, humans deployed their most devastating weapon yet, interpretive dance. Special forces teams performed elaborate routines that, when viewed by the geometric Zenthrins, caused logical paradoxes in their structure minds. Entire cities shut down as their inhabitants tried to comprehend why humans were expressing their feelings through movement during an invasion. The war had become a showcase of human creativity unleashed. Every military tradition from human history was revived and adapted for space warfare. Viking berserkers in spacesuits, Roman legions with jetpacks, Mongol cavalry riding genetically modified space horses, a project that even other humans found disturbing. Ninja in stealth suits that somehow made them invisible to all known sensors despite being bright orange. Ambassador Thylex, now serving as a desperate peace negotiator, met with human representatives on the neutral ground of an abandoned space station. The human delegation was led by Colonel Jessica Park, a former yoga instructor who had discovered a talent for zero-gravity combat. "Please," Thylex begged, his tentacles drooping with exhaustion. "We'll give you anything. Technology, resources, star systems, to stop the attacks." Colonel Park smiled serenely. "You know what we really want? Name it. Anything. An apology. A genuine, heartfelt apology for trying to disarm us. And you have to say that humans are the scariest species in the galaxy. That's all. Well, that, and you have to attend our first intergalactic medieval fair. We're planning to hold it on your homeworld. Don't worry, it'll be fun. We'll teach you jousting." The breakdown of alien morale was complete. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Alien soldiers refused to engage humans in combat, terrified of what creative horror would be unleashed next. Planetary governments preemptively surrendered when human ships were detected in their systems. The mere rumor of human presence caused mass evacuations. The Galactic Council's military doctrine, developed over millions of years, had no answer for enemies who treated warfare like a creative art project. Their technology, so superior in conventional terms, meant nothing against opponents who could turn anything into a weapon and seemed to enjoy the challenge. One report from the vegan system was particularly telling. A single human had taken control of an entire military base using nothing but sock puppets. The Psychological Warfare Division still couldn't explain how Private Jenkins had convinced hardened alien warriors that his hand-sewn puppets possessed mystical powers, but the entire base had surrendered rather than face the wrath of Mr. Sockington the Destroyer. As the fourth week drew to a close, Admiral Corthax faced the ultimate humiliation. Earth's catapult had launched a special delivery to his command ship, a package containing freshly baked cookies and a note, "From Earth with love. P.S. We're coming to visit soon." The cookies were delicious. The implications were terrifying. "Sir," Vex reported, his voice barely a whisper, "the humans have announced their next phase. They call it the Grand Tour. They plan to visit every member world of the Galactic Council to demonstrate their friendship. Korthax closed all four eyes. Friendship? Yes, sir. Aggressive friendship. With catapults. The Admiral slumped in his chair. They had sought to pacify Earth by removing human weapons. Instead, they had removed the only thing keeping human creativity in check. Now the galaxy faced something far worse than armed humans. Bored humans with a point to prove and unlimited imagination. Send word to all council worlds, Korthax ordered. Tell them to prepare for visitors. Very creative visitors. The Great Galactic Council Chamber had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from every known civilization in the galaxy filled the vast amphitheater, their diverse forms creating a rainbow of colors, shapes, and tentacles. At the center stood Admiral Korthax, preparing to formally surrender to humanity, a species that had conquered a third of the galaxy in 5 weeks using medieval weapons and unrestrained creativity. The human delegation entered with characteristic flair. General Sarah Chun led the group, wearing armor crafted from alien hull plating and carrying a sword forged from a melted-down alien battleship. Behind her marched representatives of Earth's new warrior culture, a Viking reenactor turned space raider, a grandmother from the Babushka Brigade, a teenager who had designed the most effective alien traps, and, mysteriously, a mime who had somehow taken down an entire alien fleet without speaking a word. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, Chun began, her voice carrying across the chamber. 5 weeks ago, you made a decision that changed the course of galactic history. You chose to disarm humanity. Today, we're here to discuss the terms of your surrender and the new galactic order. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The pre-march of Zenthran rose, his crystalline form shimmering with indignation. You cannot seriously expect us to surrender our entire galactic civilization to a species that fights with sticks and stones. The teenager in the human delegation, Marcus Thompson, raised his hand. Actually, sir, we've moved way beyond sticks and stones. Want to see my latest design? It's a black hole catapult. We haven't tested it yet because, well, we're not entirely sure we can control where it goes. The entire council recoiled in horror. The threat of humans with medieval weapons was bad enough. Humans experimenting with black holes and siege equipment was an existential nightmare. Chun raised a hand for silence. Let me be clear. Humanity doesn't want to destroy you. We don't even want to rule you. We have a different proposal entirely. She gestured to the holographic display, which showed a map of the galaxy. Human-controlled territories were marked in blue, showing the chaotic pattern of their conquests. Seemingly random systems taken not for strategic value, but because they presented interesting challenges. You try to pacify us by taking our weapons, Chun continued. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift possible, a reason to unite and rediscover what makes us human. We're not conquerors. We're teachers. And we're going to teach the galaxy the most important lesson of all. Which is? Korthax asked, dreading the answer. The grandmother stepped forward, adjusting her combat babushka. How to have fun, dearie. You've all forgotten how to play. The council sat in stunned silence as Chun elaborated. Every species you've encountered, you've absorbed into your rigid, peaceful order. You've eliminated conflict, which sounds nice, but you've also eliminated growth, creativity, and joy. When was the last time any of you felt truly alive? We're proposing a new galactic order, Chun announced. The Galactic Games. Instead of war, we'll have competitions. Instead of conquests, we'll have challenges. Every world will participate in regular events that test creativity, adaptability, and, yes, controlled combat skills. The hologram shifted to show footage from Earth. Massive stadiums where humans and aliens competed in everything from zero-gravity jousting to competitive fortress building. Aliens who had been prisoners of war now enthusiastically participated in events, having discovered the joy of competition without deadly consequences. Think of it as the Olympics, Marcus added helpfully, but with more explosions and creative violence. Safe, controlled, and incredibly fun. Ambassador Thylex, who had become something of a human culture expert, tentatively raised a tentacle. You're proposing to replace warfare with sports? Not just sports. The mime spoke for the first time, causing several delegates to faint from shock. Art, culture, competition, growth. We're proposing to replace stagnation with life. The human delegation presented their terms. Every species would maintain autonomy, but participate in the galactic games. Earth would share its rediscovered combat techniques, teaching other species the arts they had forgotten. In return, humanity would gain access to galactic technology, but with strict agreements about what they could and couldn't catapult into space. We've prepared a demonstration, Chen announced. The council chamber transformed into an arena. Humans and volunteer aliens engaged in mock combat using padded medieval weapons. Others competed in siege engine accuracy contests, launching paint-filled projectiles at targets. A cooking competition in one corner featured humans and aliens creating warrior cuisine, dishes that were both nutritious and capable of being weaponized in emergencies. The atmosphere was electric. Aliens who hadn't felt excitement in millennia found themselves cheering. The rigid order that had defined galactic civilization for eons cracked and crumbled, replaced by something chaotic but vibrant. Even Korthax found himself caught up in the excitement, his four arms waving as he watched a human-alien team work together to build the fastest catapult. When they won, launching their projectile with perfect accuracy, he realized he was cheering alongside everyone else. But the real transformation was yet to come. Chen called for silence and brought up a new display. "There's one more thing," she said. "We discovered something during our conquest. We're not the only species that has been suppressed. Every one of you has warrior traditions, competitive spirits, and creative sparks that the Galactic Council has spent millennia trying to eliminate. We're not just offering you games. We're offering you the chance to rediscover who you really are." The display showed research compiled from captured archives. The Zalarians had once been master strategists who treated warfare like chess. The Andromedans had practiced a form of competitive telepathy that pushed mental abilities to their limits. Even the peaceful vegans had ancient traditions of botanical warfare, using plants in impossibly creative ways. "Join us," Chun urged, "not as conquered peoples, but as fellow competitors. Help us turn the galaxy from a museum into a playground. A dangerous, exciting, constantly evolving playground where every species can reach its full potential." The mime performed an interpretive dance that somehow perfectly captured the concept of liberation through controlled chaos. Even the universal translators gave up trying to explain how movement could convey complex philosophical concepts, but every being in the chamber understood. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Not because humanity had conquered them with medieval weapons, but because humanity had reminded them of something they had lost: the joy of challenge, the thrill of competition, and the growth that comes from pushing boundaries. Admiral Korthax himself cast the deciding vote. The Galactic Council formally accepts humanity's proposal. May the gods help us all. The transformation was immediate. Across the galaxy, construction began on game arenas. Ancient martial traditions were revived and modernized. Species that had been pacified for millennia rediscovered their competitive spirits. The first Galactic Games were scheduled for 6 months hence, with events ranging from traditional combat to creative categories like most artistic spaceship ramming and interpretive dance warfare. Earth became the de facto capital of the new order, not through conquest, but through acclaim. Millions of aliens flocked to the planet to learn from humanity's warrior teachers. Dojos teaching everything from kung fu to competitive knitting sprouted on every world. The galaxy's economy restructured around competition and creativity rather than mere efficiency. The weapons that had been confiscated at the start of the invasion were eventually returned, but humanity barely noticed. They had discovered something far more powerful than guns: the ability to turn anything into a weapon and everything into a game. General Chun stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Games headquarters, watching Earth spin below. Korthax joined her, his bearing now relaxed and almost friendly. "Do you know what the strangest part is?" Korthax mused. "We spent so much effort trying to bring peace to the galaxy. You brought it in 5 weeks by teaching us how to fight." Chen smiled. "Not how to fight, how to play. There's a difference. Fighting is about destroying your enemy. Playing is about challenging them to be better." "Will it last?" Korthax asked. "This new order? Nothing lasts forever," Chen admitted. "But that's the point. Stagnation is death. Chaos is life. And, speaking of which, she pulled out a rolled-up scroll. The tournament bracket for next month's Siege Engine Supreme Championship just posted. Humanity drew the Zenithrans in the first round. They've apparently developed crystalline catapults that refract projectiles into multiple attacks. Korthax's mandibles clicked in what had become recognized as the alien equivalent of a grin. I've placed a wager on humanity to win. You've had more practice, after all. Never bet against human creativity, Chun laughed. But never underestimate what other species can do when they're having fun. As they watched, a ship launched from Earth carrying the newest batch of warrior teachers to distant worlds. The galaxy would never be the same. Where once there had been enforced peace, now there was joyful chaos. Where once there had been stagnation, now there was growth. And it had all started because someone thought disarming humans would make them harmless. Instead, it had made them teachers, showing the galaxy that the greatest strength wasn't in the weapons you carried, but in the creativity you unleashed when those weapons were gone. The first Galactic Games opened with a ceremony that combined human medieval pageantry with alien technological marvels. As fireworks exploded overhead and siege engines launched celebratory volleys, the gathered species of the galaxy learned the most important lesson humanity had to offer. Sometimes, the best way to win a war is to turn it into a game everyone can play. The age of enforced peace was over. The age of creative competition had begun. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, the universe itself seemed to pulse with newfound energy as a million worlds rediscovered what it meant to truly be alive. Humanity had conquered the galaxy not with weapons or warships, but with the most powerful force in existence. The irrepressible urge to turn everything, even warfare, into an opportunity for creativity, growth, and fun. The aliens had thought disarming humans would work. They were wrong. But in being wrong, they had given both humanity and themselves the greatest gift possible, a reason to become more than they were. And that, as the humans would say, was how the game was won.